Thank you, Ron. Yes, with Adam Lowry, 12 years a Jet, 4 now as captain. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to move right past tonight's game and talk about your career, which is, I guess, a bigger challenge for you than it is for us, but do your best. So here's how we'll start. ChatGPT, where the kids get their information these days, says this of you. By every meaningful metric, on ice, leadership, loyalty, community, Adam Lowry is the heart and soul of the Jets. So never mind the struggle tonight. By the time we're finished with you, you'll be in the Hall of Fame. And Louie wouldn't have had to go to ChatGPT for that information, would you, Louie?
No. You know what I knew from a personal story for me that I've always wanted to give you credit for was Swift Current. My son was drafted to Swift Current, Jake, and you were a Swift Current Bronco. You were the captain that year, your last year in the dub. And he came in as a 5'6", 119-pound guy, and he said that you sat beside him in the room and said, "I was a small guy like you one time. I flourished and got bigger. You will too." And you had him under your wing for the entire training camp, and I had to listen to 6 hours of Adam Lowry stories on the way home from Swift Current to Edmonton. But from my wife Cindy and me, thank you very much for welcoming him to the WHL in a kind manner that he never forgot. He still talks about it today. And I know you know Jake from the summertime and you see him, but thank you very much. That was I knew you were going to be a good captain in the NHL when they named you captain of the Winnipeg Jets because of things like that when you were younger.
No, I appreciate that. I still remember that. Lammer threw me on the line with young Jake and our team tough guy Daniel Dale, and basically said,
was protected.
"Hey, make sure this guy doesn't get touched. Make sure he has a good time. He's going to be a good player." And he's turned into a heck of an NHL player. So I do remember that, and then I remember you and Jeff Odgers giving us some fighting tips. So I might need to brush up on those after last week's one. So
no, you're doing good.
I appreciate that.
Adam, you've had shining moments in your career. I would guess the shiniest was when the puck bounced in off your ass last May in double overtime to finish the Manitoba Miracle and send the Jets to the second round of the playoffs. What were you thinking, or what do you think when you see this replayed?
Thank God we didn't fizzle out in the first round. But no, I think going back, we're down 3-1. There's about 3 minutes left in the game, and you go from thinking the season's a failure, you win the President's Trophy. We get the second goal, and you think there's a chance, and then Fed scores with 2 seconds left, and now you think, oh my God, we have a chance, and you get a power play in the first overtime, and you have some chances, but we don't convert. And as the game goes on, you're thinking, are we going to get this done? We're missing 2 of our key guys, Scheif and JMO, and KC seemed like the only guy with legs, and get the puck to him, let him create, and that's what we did, and we went to the net, and fortunately one bounced in off me, and huge relief. But just to see Canada Life Center come alive like that, and kind of going down in the room after, and my parents there, my fiance, and how proud my dad was. That was a pretty cool moment.
What player hasn't dreamed of scoring the OT winner, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup playoffs? How often, maybe that night or even into the next day, did you have to ask yourself, did I really score that?
Well, you know what? I think kind of after the game, and you're there for so long, and you get home, and my parents were staying at our house, and we're kind of just enjoying the moment. And the next morning we're just talking about how special that is, and how cool of a moment. Like you said, it's something you dream of. It's something you want to do, is propel your team to the next round. And it still kind of gives me chills talking about it 6-7 months later.
In addition to being one of the game's best two-way players, you are known for answering the bell, and you're sitting next to a guy who answered the bell probably 100 times in his career, Louie.
Yeah, the fight you talked about last week with Jack Guy, right? Well, this week, actually. And here's the thing. You called a player-only meeting. This is the big hit on Carrier, and you knew that bell was going to be answered. And I've been told, I know Kevin Sawyer talked about it in the game last night, you needed to get something going. You felt you did. You've been a leader by example. This, to me, is the ultimate example, though. You go out there, put yourself in harm's way against a real tough customer, but you've done that your entire career. That's something that's never really been a problem for you.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's, it doesn't necessarily matter the outcome of the fight. It's about showing up, right? Showing up for 100%. Your teammates, kind of dragging them into the fight, things like that. And The first period in Montreal, we had kind of given the puck away. We'd kind of created some chances for them, and I knew after that hit he was going to come. So it's about answering the bell, showing up, saying you're not going to back down, and sometimes they go better than that, and you live to fight another day. So. None worse for the wear.
When you see Jackie on the ice, when you go throw a big hit that there's probably going to be an answer, right? Same thing in this next clip we're going to see with Ryan Reeves.
Yeah, but this is the best case example, I think, of what we're talking about. This takes us back 6 years. Jets in Vegas, big hit on Alex Tuck. Ryan Reeves comes calling. The face-off here is obviously just a formality. They barely even get it in, and there you go. So Lowry versus perhaps the NHL's #1 fighter. A lot of players would have spent the rest of the night hiding, but not you. What was your thinking in readily accepting Reeves' invitation to dance?
Well, I don't know if I was thinking it, but it was an unfortunate play. I caught Tuck up a little high, and just kind of the timing of the hit was a little off. And anytime a player gets hurt or on either side, you kind of want to settle the game down. Obviously, them throwing Ryan out there, I knew what he was looking for, and. If I don't take that fight, well, now he's going to be running around, and it's going to be one of my teammates in the line of fire. So, if you answer the bell, it kind of stops there, and I wouldn't recommend it. But sometimes you got to show up, and like I said, it doesn't matter how you do in the fight. It's just you show up, it's done. You can move on, you can play the game.
Answering the bell is one thing, but then holding the opposition to account is another. Louie.
Yeah, I mean, so on the flip side, when you see something happen to your players, like we're going to see in this one, Cole Perfetti takes a shot, you instantly go to a guy like Jamie Benn and say, hey, that can't happen. Don't be doing that to our players. So it goes both ways, right? You understand when someone comes to you, and then you get in a pretty good spirited fight here with a tough customer again. I mean, you don't pick your spots. That's for sure.
You know what? Hey, I try and go after guys in my weight class, in my size. And this game we had played really well, and we were controlling the game. And I knew what he was doing. He's trying to get out of the game. He's trying to fire up his team. They didn't have a whole lot going, but you have to show your teammates that you have their back. Regardless of the score, regardless of the outcome, and he's a tough customer. He switched to a left, and he caught me. I had a nice black eye after that one. So, but you know what? I'm happy to do it for the guys. We got a great group, and it is one of the bigger guys. That's one of the responsibilities, and with Schenner, with Stan, whoever, we've got a lot of guys that'll step up. We might not have a true heavyweight, but guys that'll answer the bell kind of against anyone.
Okay, let's move on from scraps to your.
Thank you
for a bit anyway.
Thank you
To your father, Dave, who played over 1,000 games with 5 different teams. I think Louie's about the only guy who never played with your father. How many times were you called Dave early in your career?
Not too many. I used to get called Kyle. Kyle Lowry from the Raptors. That would be the mistake by the linesmen. Fortunately, they'd compliment my dad and say how professional, and they had a lot of respect for him. But I didn't get that name switched too often.
Well, he was a hard-nosed player like yourself, and I mean he battled himself to over 1,000 games in the NHL, over 100 games in playoffs, some Stanley Cup runs to the final. I mean, he was a guy that everybody wanted on their team, and that's why he stayed around for so long. You kind of mold yourself after him a little bit when you were watching him growing up?
Well, I think growing up and just seeing his career, and obviously he was an incredibly skilled player coming out of junior, from the London Knights, but he found a way to carve out a role in the NHL, and he was able to stick around for so long because he could adapt. He could be a checker. He could be a guy you could trust putting out there. He'd drop the gloves when you have to, and I think that's one of the biggest lessons was you have to find a role. You have to find a way to contribute. Everyone coming out of junior, that's drafted or college or from Europe, they're all the best players on their team. There's only so many spots on the power play. There's only so many spots in the top 6. How else are you going to impact the game? So, very fortunate just to see his career grow up around the game, his work ethic, and I think that's something that's really he passed down to me.
It was the full Lowry back in Winnipeg in 2021 when Paul Maurice resigned as Jets coach and Dave took over. I cannot imagine that it, especially if you're a leader of a team, it's not awkward from time to time to have your father coaching you in the NHL. What was it like having Dave behind the bench? For you?
Well, at first it was awesome. When an assistant coach, they can kind of be more, friendly. You can have that relationship. I didn't really have to deal with him too much except on the penalty kill. He was working with the D, and you could kind of blend that, professional and personal relationship. I think when Paul stepped down, that kind of blurred the lines, and it really made it difficult on our relationship. We kind of almost had to put the personal relationship on hold, and that's a huge support system for me away from the rink, and to not have that was tough. I think I put a lot more pressure on myself. Obviously you want to win games, but it was his first opportunity as kind of an interim head coach, and you want to make the best of it. You want to give him the best opportunity to get another opportunity, and it was great in the sense that we got to spend a lot of time during COVID together. I think seeing him back in the NHL with a different organization, I think, in terms of being able to be a leader on our team, him being able to be a voice, from the coaching staff, it just works out better when we're on different sides.
But look, it is common practice amongst players in the NHL to once in a while carve up the coach. It'd be strange if it didn't happen.
That's when you call them coach, though, right? Not dad. Listen, coach.
Did that situation from time to time perhaps even give you anxiety?
Yeah, well, I think that was one of the tough things is, not that it's a common practice every day, but there's guys that have disagreements with coaches, and they start talking about what they'd want to change and stuff, and then you come around and it gets a little quiet, and it puts them in a tough spot. It puts me in a tough spot. So it was one of those things we didn't foresee coming when he came as an assistant coach. We kind of assumed that Paul was going to be there for a while, and he was going to maintain that kind of assistant coach role, and so, it was difficult. It wasn't, an easy end to the season for sure.
Gwen wants to know if you have any plans to follow in your father's footsteps and coach when you're done playing.
To be honest, I feel like coaching is one of the most thankless jobs in the NHL behind referees. You win in spite of your coach and you lose because of the coach. So, I think they're so underappreciated for what they do, the hours they spend, the amount of time they, look at film, try and find ways to get the most out of guys. They're the first ones at the rink. They're the last ones to leave. So I'd love to stay in the game of hockey when I'm done. I don't know if coaching's in my future, but, fortunately, hopefully I can have a few more years to kind of figure that one out.
You were born in St. Louis shortly after Dave, or at the time Dave finished up his time with the Blues. Then it was on to Florida, San Jose after that, and you got to Calgary in the year 2000 when Dave got signed by the Flames. So you would have been, 6 or 7 back then. You consider yourself a product of the Calgary minor system?
Yeah, that's where, the most development took place. I started playing in Florida, but it wasn't really till we moved to Calgary that, hockey became the thing. Growing up in Canada, it's watching Hockey Night in Canada. Mm-hmm. Everyone's hockey crazy. So, it wasn't until we moved there that, it really took off. And fortunate to play in the Bow Valley Minor Hockey Association, move up to the Calgary Buffaloes Hockey Association. And, I'm really thankful for those two groups that, really kind of pushed my development. I have a lot of childhood friends from those teams, and was able to kind of use those as a springboard to playing in Swift Current.
The 04 run by the Flames to the Stanley Cup final, you'd have been, I think, 10 years old?
Grade 5.
In grade 5.
Right in the wheelhouse.
What is your most vivid memory of the run?
Well, I've got a few. I got to go on the ice when they won the Western Conference, dressing up to go to games. They had the Mike Commodore wigs, the green hard hats, the giant flags that you see flying. I was too young to experience the Red Mile, but after one of the games, my dad kind of drove by so we could kind of see a little bit of it. And I just remember the energy in the city, the excitement at school, whether it was a home game or a road game, just how excited everyone was. And, it was unbelievable. Unfortunately, video review wasn't as good as it is now.
Let's have a look at it. Was the Marty Gellin a potential game cup-clinching goal in Game 6?
You can't talk about this series without talking about this goal. Or no goal.
That's tough. That's heartbreak.
Yeah, and you would have felt the full capacity of that heartbreak as a 10-year-old,
yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah. It was it.
There you go. There you go. You're still to this day. You're not going away.
You and your older brother, Joel, were privileged to be sons of an NHLer because you got to hang around rinks and be in the presence of great players. Louie.
Yeah, you had a front row seat, right? So it's a different little mentality when your dad plays and they're his friends that you're watching every day. But was there any players that you kind of looked up to or were your favorites coming through that mix?
Yeah, well, from the Florida team, Stu Barnes was my favorite player. I thought his nickname was awesome. I think that's why I was drawn to him, Barney. And and then San Jose, Patrick Marleau. He was kind of just coming in. He was living with Kelly Rudy at the time. You know, he was an 18-year-old breaking in. He became mine and my brother's favorite player. And then, obviously, growing up in Calgary and what Iggy meant to the city, what he meant to the Flames. You know, he was a pretty special player, and pretty cool to go to the rink, watch him get to do his thing when he was so dominant.
Well, you were the perfect age when Dave got to Calgary to be in awe of Jarome Iginla. So fast forward to your second year in the NHL, and this.
We got a fight at center.
Jarome
Iginla.
I knew he was coming with the left too. I've seen enough.
Yeah. So answering the bell in the NHL for you goes back a long way because that was 2015, Louie.
Well, I mean, during this fight, are you thinking to yourself, I'm fighting the guy that I idolized growing up? Is that what's going through your mind? Or are you just trying to survive?
I'm trying to survive. And I knew he was going to throw a left.
He didn't back up
I'd
ever. He always came forward.
So often. You know, I remember in the 04 run, he'd fight, every team's kind of best player, their best defenseman that he was going against. Like, what was it, Darian Hatcher? He fought Vinny in the finals. He fought Matthias Ohlund. Like, and he'd always come in with the left, and he could switch. And I knew it was coming. Doesn't matter. He still caught me.
19th year in the league, by the way, when you fought him with the Avalanche.
Yeah, that wasn't.
Still almost scored 30 goals that year.
Yeah. No, an incredible player. I think it was a great trade-off for us.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go.
Let's address the Jets' commitment to you and yours to the team. Jets had their annual gala just a couple of weeks ago, and the chairman of the team, Mark Chipman, had some breaking news.
Well, since you asked, Sarah, and I know you're a professional, so I know
So
I can
there's Mark
trust
announcing a
you with
5-year
this
deal for you. I think it's Neil
And
Pionk
I know
here
everybody
plays
in
the
this
video,
room
but this 5-year deal will take you to 37, meaning you will finish your career as a Jet. Was that part of the contract negotiations?
video screen.
Your desire to stay in Winnipeg?
Yeah, well, you know what, I think talking to Craig Oster, my agent, and he kind of said, well, you can't just tell me that's the only team you want to sign with. That's bad negotiating. I said that up on the stage, but all along, like we talked about, we followed my dad's career around, and he played 19 years, but 5 different stops, and for me to be so fortunate to play with one organization, be drafted here, developed here, grow up here, kind of find my role, and start to expand on that, and to have spent 11 years so far and then be into my 12th season, it's not something that, really happens for kind of role players, non-superstars, non-elite guys. And to have the opportunity to, finish my career with one organization, play in one spot, in a city that I love playing for, it was kind of all I wanted to do. So, I was super grateful that we were able to get the negotiation done, the contract done, and now it's up to me to, kind of live up to it. So, obviously, I haven't had the start of the season I'd have liked, but
well, slowed by the injury, obviously. But
for sure. But it's one of those things. I wanted to stay in Winnipeg. It's a great city. We have a great organization. Chipper, the management, the coaching staff, the players. So, super fortunate.
You're going to be forever linked to Winnipeg because your wife-to-be, your fiancée, Laura, is from Winnipeg. Tell us about this rather subtle announcement on Instagram last August.
Yeah, I don't post a whole lot, so it was big news. It had been a long time coming, and we did it out at Lake of the Woods at her aunt.
Your engagement place. You're talking about?
Yes, our engagement. Sorry, I thought. But yeah, it was the highlight of our summer. So
listen, we're
over the moon.
I have some intel here. I think I do anyway. You were one of the Jets who attended our very first gala for the Bruce Oak Recovery Center's May of 2018. The gala format is that Jets players sit at the tables of our big supporters, and you were at a table with John and Jane Quinton And I don't know at the time if they knew that you were dating their daughter. Do I have that right?
Yeah, no, it was still fresh. So, it was early on. We weren't sure, it kind of, but.
Well, that's the movie stuff right there.
I was going
Right?
to say, that's
So-
a romantic comedy. Did you let them know, or did you keep it in the pocket?
No, Laura told me just keep it on the down low. So,
On the DL.
and you know what they say, happy wife, happy life. So
All right.
I learned
There you
early.
go.
This is probably just about as awkward as having your father Dave coach you in the NHL. Listen, there's a few things about your family we have to get in here. Yours is a full hockey family. Little known fact, your brother Joel, 2 years older than you, was taken in the same draft, 2011. He was picked by the Los Angeles Kings. His pro career lasted 5 or 6 years, but before that, he went to Cornell on a full ride and got his degree. What's he doing now?
He works in financial management, and he actually just switched over to their sports arm. So he's coming up on being retired for about a year and a half, and that transition, obviously, it's tough when you go from a life of pro hockey to, working a regular job. But he's a super smart guy, and, I know he's going to have a lot of success doing what kind of going into that sports division and, managing people's money. And, I couldn't be happier for him to be able to stay in the sports world.
Your sister Tess is still in the game as a coach. She's on the ice here at the Flames training camp, start a camp this year. Does she ever critique your game?
No, she's too nice. She leaves me alone. But it's awesome that the Flames give coaches throughout Hockey Calgary the opportunity to have these mentorships and get to go on the ice and things like that. And she played 4 years at St. Scholastica and had a successful college career there. So I'm happy that she's able to stay in the game as well.
Final point: if you're going to captain a team in Winnipeg where the NHL really, really matters, you have to have a social conscience, and you do through your work at the Toba Center. Tell us about that.
Yeah, the Toba Center. So as you can see, it's a child advocacy center, and it's located just outside of Assiniboine Forest, right by the zoo. And they deal with child abuse. I think it's one of those things that's not talked about often enough, but it impacts so many different walks of life. And they service all of Manitoba and the Northern Territories, and they're an all-encompassing facility where, from interviews to case navigators, they have police, RCMP, First Nations police. They have forensic nurses, doctors there. They have case navigators. They have all the support so that rather than these kids having to go and tell their story in so many different places, they can go there. They can kind of be walked through the whole, situation.
Yeah, the whole gamut.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where they service so many kids. It's such a needed program that I'm happy to kind of bring some visibility to it, and they do incredible work.
You've answered the bell with the Toba Center for the kids, as you have in the NHL for your teammates. Thanks for joining us, Adam. So there's Adam Lowry, destined to be a lifelong Jet. He was our guest on After Hours. Back to conclude proceedings in a moment.